There are roasts, and then there are moments that feel like cultural reset buttons. When Bill Burr opened his mouth about Elon Musk, it wasn't a joke. It was a demolition job. No setup, no soft landing, just a comedian with nothing to lose, going straight for the jugular. And what made it even more brutal, it didn't come from a political analyst, a tech rival, or a late-night TV host. It came from a guy who's made a living exposing the ridiculous. Burr didn't care about Musk's billions. He didn't flinch at Musk's army of online defenders. He went straight at the image Musk built for himself, one sarcastic punch at a time. But here's where things got truly wild. Because somewhere behind the scenes, one man watched the entire takedown unfold, and he didn't like what he saw. Donald Trump. See, when you mock Musk in public, you're not just poking fun at a tech billionaire. You're chipping away at the shiny alliance Trump spent years cultivating. And when that alliance gets mocked, Trump reacts exactly how you'd expect. Loud, impulsive, and totally out of control. But we'll get to that, because before Trump's meltdown, there was a microphone. And Bill Burr standing in front of it ready to burn the house down. Bill Burr didn't ease into it. He didn't test the waters or offer a playful jab. He went straight into full-blown annihilation like he'd been waiting for the moment Musk slipped up just one more time. On his podcast, Burr lit into Musk like a guy who'd had enough of the circus, calling out the carefully curated wardrobe, the plastic smooth face, and the constant need to appear like the smartest man in every room. He dresses like he just stormed out of a hot topic, Burr snapped, voice dripping with disbelief. Then he followed it up with a line that felt like a punch to the gut. You weren't cool then, and you're not cool now. You just have money and Wi-Fi. The audience laughed, sure, but there was a deeper edge to it. This wasn't just comedy, this was frustration. This was Burr holding up a mirror and saying, this is what we've let billionaires become. He mocked the hair plugs, the smug expressions, the weird obsession with being adored on social media, and while Elon's fans scrambled to defend him online, Burr didn't even blink. He wasn't looking for approval. He was making a point. Just because someone builds rockets doesn't mean they're above being clowned. It was bold, ruthless, and raw. But more than anything, it was honest, the kind of honesty that celebrities avoid and billionaires pay to erase. And while the clip exploded across the internet, one man stayed oddly quiet. At least for a moment, because the second-hand sting from Burr's takedown, it didn't just bruise Elon Musk's image. It poked at something much bigger, the reputation of the man who'd bet big on Musk's mystique. Up next, Trump's billionaire bromance with Musk and why the roast hit way too close to home. For years, Elon Musk sold the world a very specific image. He wasn't just a CEO, he was the rebel genius, the guy who outsmarted the system. The visionary who could tweet memes at midnight, launch rockets by morning, and somehow still be taken seriously. People didn't just admire him, they worshipped him. He was the face of disruption, the Silicon Valley cowboy, a billionaire who, at least on the surface, didn't play by the rules. But then Bill Burr came along and shattered that illusion in under 5 minutes. He didn't need insider documents, he didn't quote financials or attack business strategies. He just used plain language, sharp wit, and decades of comedic timing to expose what most people were afraid to say out loud. Elon Musk is more hype than hero. Burr mocked the tech messiah complex Musk had built. This idea that every weird move was part of some larger genius plan. He compared Musk's companies to high-concept IKEA furniture, flashy, overpromised, and barely holding together once you look closely. The self-driving cars that still crash. The Mars missions that are mostly marketing. The Twitter rebrand that turned into a full-blown identity crisis. And as Burr dismantled the legend piece by piece, something strange happened. People started to nod. Not just laugh, but agree. Because when a comedian makes you laugh and think, that's when the myth starts to fall apart. Suddenly, Musk wasn't the untouchable tech oracle anymore. He was just a guy in a blazer, making wild promises and hoping no one asks too many questions. And while Burr moved on to the next joke, one man couldn't. Because if Musk's image collapsed in public, what did that say about the man who had tied himself to that image for political survival? Next up, Trump's billionaire bromance with Musk, and why this roast sent shockwaves through more than just tech circles. Donald Trump has always seen himself as the ultimate power broker. He doesn't just want allies, he wants icons on his side. And for a while, Elon Musk fit the mold perfectly. Here was a billionaire who didn't bow to the mainstream, a tech mogul who flirted with chaos, clashed with the media, and talked like a disruptor. In Trump's world, that wasn't a liability. It was a mirror. So when Musk started praising Trump's policies, Trump took it personally, in the best way possible. He paraded Musk as proof that the smartest minds in the country were backing him. Musk was more than a supporter. He was a symbol. Behind closed doors, Trump would name-drop Elon like a favorite trophy. At rallies, he praised Musk's intellect. He even floated the idea, half joking, half serious, that Musk might be involved in a new government department for innovation. It was Trump's way of elevating himself through association. Because in the world of image politics, Musk gave Trump tech credibility, and Trump gave Musk political cover. They were two men with massive egos and overlapping interests: disruption, domination, and legacy. But here's the thing about putting someone on a pedestal. If they fall, so do you. That's why Bill Burr's roast wasn't just comedy to Trump. It was sabotage, not just of Musk's brand, but of Trump's carefully curated circle of power. The bromance had been built on mutual admiration and mutual benefit. Now it was being mocked in public, and Trump could feel the foundation cracking. And when Trump feels that crack, he doesn't reflect. He retaliates. For most people, Bill Burr's roast of Elon Musk was just hilarious. But for Donald Trump, it cut deeper than anyone realized. Because this wasn't just some stand-up bit. It was an attack on a partnership he treated like a trophy. Trump isn't wired to handle public embarrassment. He's obsessed with control, image, and loyalty. So when someone like Burr walks on stage and dismantles one of his most high-profile allies, that's not just a joke. It's personal. You have to understand. Trump doesn't just see Musk as a smart guy. He sees Musk as a reflection of himself. The arrogance, the defiance, the God complex disguised as vision. It's all part of the same blueprint Trump's been running on for decades. So when Burr mocked Musk's insecurities, his look, his voice, his obsession with Twitter, it wasn't just Elon who got torched. It was the whole idea of Musk as an untouchable genius. And in Trump's world, if you humiliate one king, you're undermining the entire empire. Trump's silence didn't last long, but before he fired back, you could almost hear the gears turning. This wasn't just a moment of comedy. It was a threat to the illusion he'd worked so hard to sell. The illusion that his allies were unstoppable, that his endorsements meant something, that when Trump pointed to someone and said, "This is the future," the world had no choice but to believe it. Now that future was being laughed at, on podcasts, in headlines, all over social media. And Trump? He was watching his golden boy get ripped to shreds, and realizing he couldn't stop it. It was only a matter of time before Trump snapped. The moment Elon Musk became the punchline, Trump's ego followed him straight into the fire. At first, there was silence. But Trump's silence is never peace. It's that eerie, simmering kind of silence that builds before an explosion. Like the air right before a thunderstorm, you just know something is about to break. And it did. Trump stormed onto Truth Social like a man on a mission. Not to make a point, but to reclaim a narrative that was spiraling out of his hands. One post turned into 3. 3 turned into 12. And by the end of the night, his timeline looked less like a political message and more like a panic attack in real time. He called Elon one of the greatest minds in the world. Brilliant, he said. They hate him because he tells the truth. He even threw in a bizarre comment about Musk launching more rockets than NASA and making America cool again. The irony? This wasn't a defense of Elon Musk. It was a defense of Trump's decision to align with Elon Musk. See, for Trump, everything is personal. He doesn't praise people. He validates his own choices. So when Musk got roasted, it wasn't just Musk who took a hit. It was Trump's judgment, Trump's taste, Trump's entire image as the guy who backs winners. And when that image cracks, Trump doesn't reflect. He attacks. Within hours, Burr became a target. Trump posted a clip of Burr's stand-up from 3 years ago, captioning it, "Washed up. Never funny. Just another angry liberal failure." The comments were wild. Some of his followers didn't even know who Bill Burr was. But Trump didn't care. He wasn't trying to be accurate. He was trying to win the moment. Then came the conspiracies. According to Trump, Burr's roast was probably coordinated by the media. He suggested there was an organized effort to take down Elon because he's disrupting the global elite. Yes, a stand-up comedian on a podcast was, in Trump's mind, part of some shadowy cabal trying to derail America's future. This wasn't strategy. This was flailing. A man watching his fantasy world being poked with a stick and realizing the whole thing might be made of paper. And here's where it got even weirder. Trump began referencing old Musk quotes from 2020, like they were some kind of prophecy. He reminded everyone that Musk stood up for free speech, fought censorship, and proved the fake news wrong again and again. He even claimed, without a trace of irony, that Musk was more presidential than most politicians, all while Twitter users were memeing Musk in clown makeup and sharing Burr's roast on loop. Trump couldn't take it, not because he cares deeply about Musk's feelings. He doesn't. But because his entire brand is built on being right, being strong, and never being laughed at. And suddenly, the guy he'd held up as a genius was being shredded by a bald comedian in a hoodie. The meltdown was ugly, not loud in volume, but loud in desperation. It was the kind of unraveling that doesn't look like defeat to the person doing it, but to everyone else watching, it's plain as day. Every Truth Social post, every insult hurled at Burr, every attempt to paint Musk as a victim, it all just made things worse. Trump wasn't defending a friend. He was defending his reflection, and that reflection was cracking in real time. What made it even more surreal? Trump never once addressed the actual joke. He didn't deny the hair plugs. He didn't correct the laminated face bit. He didn't even try to argue that Musk wasn't the awkward figure Burr described, because he couldn't. There was no logical defense. So instead he tried to drown it out, with noise, with rage, with a classic barrage of whataboutism and half-truths. But it was too late. The internet had moved on. To the roast, to the jokes, to the moment Musk was humanized, not through praise but through mockery. And Trump, he was left behind, flailing in a sea of memes, hashtags, and a comedian who wasn't done yet. You'd think after torching one of the world's most powerful men, Bill Burr might take a step back. Cool off, let the dust settle. Nope. If anything, Burr doubled down. Because for him, this wasn't just a one-off jab. It was the start of a full-blown reckoning. And Elon Musk, he was just the appetizer. In the days that followed, Burr didn't walk back a single word. He expanded on them. He dug deeper. He leaned into the absurdity of Musk's empire with a grin on his face and zero regard for backlash. He joked about Elon's obsession with reinventing everything except basic human decency, mocked his desperate attempts to be seen as cool while tweeting like a 14-year-old with a god complex. And then he went further. He brought up the bizarre contradictions in Musk's public image, how the man preaches free speech while silencing critics, how he talks about saving humanity but treats his employees like disposable parts in a machine. Burr didn't just punch up, he cut down to the core, and the crowd loved it. Clips of his rants went viral again and again. Every time Musk trended, Burr's name was right there beside him. This time not as an analyst or a rival, but as the guy who finally said what everyone else was thinking. And Burr knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't some clueless outsider throwing stones from a distance. He understood the game. He knew that tech billionaires like Musk have created an aura of invincibility, shielded by money, fame, and the illusion of genius. But Burr? He saw through it. And more importantly, he didn't care. He even joked about Musk's Iron Man complex, mocking the idea that tweeting memes and launching satellites makes someone a world savior. It's like watching a kid play with matches and everyone calling him a visionary, Burr said. And we're just supposed to clap while the house burns down? It wasn't just comedy anymore, it was cultural commentary, disguised as laughter, delivered like a wrecking ball. And the brilliance of Burr's approach? He never made it feel personal. He wasn't ranting out of hate, he was laughing out of disbelief, like a guy sitting in the back of a chaotic board meeting saying, "Are we really doing this?" That tone, that weary, sarcastic tone, is what made the takedown so effective. Because Burr wasn't yelling, he wasn't preaching, he was just holding up a mirror and letting the reflection do the damage. And while the mainstream media danced around Musk's public meltdowns and Trump's strange loyalty, Burr went right for the jugular. He mocked Elon's desperate need to be edgy, called out his cringy Twitter polls, roasted the idea that someone who names his child after a password reset code should be trusted with the future of civilization. And when people started calling Burr too harsh, he didn't flinch. He said, "I'm not being harsh, I'm being accurate. If the truth hurts, maybe it's time to ask why." That's what separates a good roast from a legendary one. It's not just about the laughs, it's about the honesty underneath them. And Burr was peeling back the curtain on one of the biggest myths of the modern era. Musk wasn't some misunderstood genius. He was a deeply insecure man, insulated by wealth, pretending to be the future. And Trump? Trump was the hype man, the promoter, the one yelling into the microphone, "This guy's changing the world," while Burr stood nearby holding a sign that said, "Are we sure?" And the craziest part? Burr still hadn't said Musk's name more than once or twice. He let the audience connect the dots. He didn't need to spell it out. He just aimed at the persona, and the facade started cracking on its own. Meanwhile, Trump was still unraveling, trying to plug the holes with over-the-top praise and nostalgic name drops. But Burr was already ahead. He wasn't just mocking Musk. He was mocking what we've allowed Musk to become. A man with billions of dollars, a platform bigger than most nations, and a sense of humor that disappears the second he's not in control of the punchline. And the more Burr joked, the more people listened. Not because they hated Musk, but because they finally felt like someone was cutting through the noise. This wasn't rebellion. It was revelation. And Burr somehow had become the most dangerous voice in the room. Not because he had power, but because he had nothing to lose. Every empire built on image has one fatal flaw. The truth doesn't need a spotlight, it just needs a crack, and that's exactly what Bill Burr created. Not with a press conference, not with leaked documents, but with jokes, sarcastic, cutting, brutally honest jokes. The kind of humor that didn't just make people laugh, as it made them think. For years, Elon Musk had cultivated a persona that felt untouchable. He was a self-anointed genius, the messiah of Mars, the meme lord of modern capitalism. In his world, every blunder was rebranded as bold. Every failure? A step toward innovation. Every strange tweet? Disruption. And it worked. Until it didn't. Because once Burr started peeling back the layers, people began seeing the cracks. Not just in Musk's personality, but in the entire fantasy surrounding him. The Tesla hype. The free speech platform that banned critics. The Mars missions that looked more like publicity stunts than scientific milestones. Suddenly, the man who used to be seen as a forward-thinking revolutionary started looking like a middle-aged billionaire cosplaying as Tony Stark. And what's worse than being hated? Being laughed at. That's the one thing powerful people can't stomach, especially ones who build their identities on admiration. Musk wasn't just being criticized, he was being exposed. Not by a rival tech CEO, not by Congress, by a stand-up comic who said what the media never dared, yet this guy isn't the future, he's the punchline. And for Donald Trump, that was unbearable. Because Musk wasn't just a business ally, he was a brand extension. Trump had held him up as proof that his movement had the smartest minds behind it. He told crowds, "Elon gets it. He understands what we're doing." But now, that genius Trump hyped up was trending online for being mocked like a malfunctioning chatbot. And the man who once claimed to be reshaping the world suddenly couldn't even reshape his public image. It was devastating, not just for Musk, but for Trump's credibility. Because once Musk looked ridiculous, Trump looked wrong. And if Trump looked wrong, that meant Trump's judgment could be questioned. And that's a line he never allows people to cross. Meanwhile, Burr kept hitting nerves. Without even naming Trump directly, Burr dismantled the illusion they both benefited from. That wealth equals wisdom, that ego equals leadership, that chaos equals genius. And as the internet latched onto Burr's takedown, something else started to shift. People who used to defend Musk started backing away. Silicon Valley types stopped retweeting him. Podcasts that once praised him began calling him erratic. And quietly, without much fanfare, the illusion began to collapse. The myth of Musk as the tech prophet, the libertarian savior, the digital architect of humanity's future, was unraveling like a badly coded app. And Trump knew it. He didn't need headlines to spell it out. He could feel the shift. The once bright glow around Musk had dimmed. And without that glow, Trump's own reflection began to look a little more hollow. Because here's the truth. Trump doesn't just surround himself with loyalists. He surrounds himself with symbols, people who represent something he wants to absorb. Musk was supposed to represent brilliance, innovation, and cultural dominance. Now, he represented none of those things. He represented a man who couldn't take a joke, a man who cracked under the pressure of not being idolized, a man who talked like a genius but got dunked on by a comedian with a Boston accent and a bad attitude. And Trump? He wasn't just watching this fall, he was living it. Because when the illusion shattered, it didn't land at Musk's feet. It echoed through every rally speech, every Elon's doing great soundbite, every moment Trump had used Musk as a prop to boost himself. That's the danger of building your brand on borrowed credibility. When the person you prop up falls, you fall with them. And that's what made this roast different. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a political bombshell. It was just humor, sharpened into a truth so undeniable even the most loyal followers had to stop and look twice. And once that illusion is shattered, there's no going back. No press release can fix it. No tweet can unroast it. No rally chant can drown it out. The damage was done, not by a politician, not by a journalist, but by a guy with a microphone, a sharp tongue, and no interest in playing the game. Bill Burr didn't just make Elon Musk look ridiculous, he revealed how fragile the whole system was. And that revelation? It shook Trump's world more than anyone realized. In the end, it wasn't a battle of ideas. It wasn't about policy, innovation, or politics. It was a war between egos. Two men who thrive on adoration, unraveling under the weight of a joke. Bill Burr never set out to destroy Elon Musk. He wasn't trying to make headlines or go viral or trigger a political firestorm. He was just being Bill Burr, raw, honest, cynical in a way only truth-tellers can be. He saw something absurd in plain sight, and he said it out loud. That's what made it so effective, so devastating, because Musk didn't know how to respond. How do you fight someone who isn't trying to win? How do you silence someone who doesn't care if you like him? For all his billions, all his influence, all his PR teams and social media armies, Elon Musk was powerless against a man with a microphone and zero patience for nonsense. Every time Burr spoke, another layer of Musk's myth peeled away. The genius, the disruptor, the savior, replaced by something far less impressive. A fragile man chasing relevance. A guy who tweets like a teenager but wants to be treated like Einstein. A billionaire who built an empire out of tech and then crashed it into his own ego. And in the shadows of that collapse stood Donald Trump, watching, calculating, unraveling. Because Trump had staked something far more valuable than money on Musk, his narrative. He needed Musk to represent a future where boldness triumphed over rules, where outsiders took control. Musk was the proof that Trump's chaos had a purpose, that it was part of something bigger. So when Burr shredded Musk, it wasn't just a roast. It was a symbolic attack on the entire Trump fantasy. The idea that ego equals strength, that defiance equals brilliance, that being loud, arrogant, and unaccountable somehow makes you right. Trump's silence didn't last, of course. It never does. He lashed out in posts, praised Musk louder than ever, insulted Burr with the same recycled lines he uses on every critic. But none of it worked. Because the power of comedy, real comedy, is that it sticks. It lingers. It plants doubt in the minds of people who used to believe without question. And Burr didn't just plant doubt. He planted a mirror in front of two of the most powerful egos in America and asked, "Is this really who you think you are?" And for once the crowd didn't cheer the billionaires, they laughed at them. What made this even more devastating was how small it all looked in the end. Two titans of influence, Musk with his rockets, Trump with his rallies, brought to their knees not by legislation, not by scandal, but by a joke, by a single voice unwilling to buy into the hype. There were no winners here, not really. Musk, once seen as the architect of the future, now looked like a guy grasping for validation in meme form. Trump, the king of optics, found himself propping up a man who had just been exposed as emotionally brittle and painfully self-serious. Even their followers didn't quite know how to respond. The MAGA crowd didn't trust tech. The tech crowd didn't trust Trump. And now their two idols were tied together, stumbling through a PR disaster with no real escape plan. Meanwhile, Burr kept talking, not because he wanted more attention, he already had it, but because this is what real comedians do. They slice through the performance and leave only the uncomfortable truth behind. They don't care about approval ratings or share prices. They care about calling out the absurdity we're all pretending not to see. And what we were seeing, clearer than ever, was that these men weren't invincible. They were insecure, predictable, trapped by their need to be admired and terrified of being irrelevant. That's the tragic part of ego-driven power. It demands attention, but it can't survive mockery. It feeds on applause but crumbles under laughter. It can weather scandal but not satire, and so here we are, no press conference, no courtroom drama. Just a single podcast episode with one man telling uncomfortable truths, and two of the most powerful figures in America exposed as paper giants. Musk will keep tweeting. Trump will keep posting. They'll throw money, distractions, and slogans at the fire, hoping it goes out. But the damage is done. The illusion has cracked. The mythology is bleeding. And once people see the truth, even for a second, it's hard to unsee it. All it took was one comedian who refused to play along. One man who saw the circus and said, "That's not a genius. That's just a clown in a CEO suit." One man who stood on stage, looked into the camera, and said what everyone else was too afraid to admit. We've been conned. And once that sentence hits the air, not even the richest man in the world can buy silence. In a world obsessed with image, influence, and inflated self-importance, it wasn't a scandal that pierced the armor. It wasn't a lawsuit, a headline, or a political takedown. It was a roast. One man, one mic, and a 5-minute rant that echoed louder than a press conference ever could. Bill Burr didn't just insult Elon Musk, he exposed something much deeper. He cracked the illusion that power makes you untouchable. He tore away the fantasy that money equals meaning. And in doing so, he dragged one of the world's most revered egos down to earth without ever raising his voice. The moment Burr opened his mouth, the balance shifted. He didn't shout, didn't scream, didn't manufacture outrage. He did what comedians have always done at their best. He held up a mirror, and what he reflected back wasn't a visionary. It was a man desperately clinging to an identity he built online, hoping no one would notice the cracks. But someone did. And then millions did. Because when the truth is funny, it spreads like wildfire. What started as a podcast monologue turned into a cultural event. Clips were shared, quotes were posted, memes exploded. And suddenly, the man who once styled himself as the future of humanity was being laughed at like a failed magician whose tricks stopped working. But this wasn't just about Elon Musk. It was about the entire machine behind him. The fans who built shrines to his tweets. The politicians who latched onto his clout. The media that treated every half-baked idea as gospel. And most of all, Donald Trump. Because Trump didn't just support Musk. He endorsed him. He adopted him as proof that his movement was backed by genius. He stood on stages and praised Musk like he was the ultimate validator of Trump's own legacy. They weren't just allies. They were reflections of each other, both feeding off attention, both allergic to accountability. So when Burr dismantled Musk's image, he didn't just take down a billionaire, he took a swing at everything Trump had tried to build through association. And for Trump, whose ego is built entirely on narrative control, that swing hit hard. It was a rare moment of cultural clarity, because here were two of the most powerful men in the country, one running a tech empire, the other clinging to political relevance, both exposed by a stand-up comic with nothing to lose. There were no talking points to hide behind, no corporate spin, no carefully worded statements, just laughter, relentless, unavoidable, unapologetic. And in that laughter there was something even more dangerous than criticism. There was disbelief. Disbelief that we ever bought into it all in the first place. Disbelief that these men convinced so many people that arrogance was genius, that chaos was vision, that power made them exempt from being ridiculed. That disbelief turned to recognition. Recognition turned to detachment. And detachment is what powerful people fear most. Because without attention, without loyalty, without blind followers, their entire foundation begins to crumble. And it all started with a roast. Not a scandal, not a lawsuit, not a documentary. A roast. A reminder that ego is loud, but truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to be said out loud, clearly, confidently, and without fear. Burr did that. He didn't set out to start a movement, but he started one anyway. not because people want to destroy Musk or Trump, but because people are tired. Tired of being told that greatness can't be questioned. Tired of watching billionaires behave like teenagers with megaphones. Tired of watching public figures collapse into victimhood the moment they face consequences or jokes. And maybe that's what made Burr's roast land harder than anyone expected, because it didn't just challenge two men, it challenged us. It asked us why we worship these people, why we excuse their tantrums, why we let wealth replace wisdom and fame replace character, and most importantly, it reminded us that laughter, when used right, isn't just entertainment. It's resistance. It's accountability. It's truth, disguised as comedy. So when people say it was just a roast, they're wrong. It was a cultural shift, a moment when the curtain got pulled back. And we all saw the same thing. The emperor's not just naked. He's tweeting about it, and no matter how many rockets get launched, how many slogans get shouted, or how many distractions get thrown in the air, none of them can drown out the sound of millions of people realizing all at once. They've been laughing at the wrong people,